Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. As you can see, if you're checking us out on YouTube, we have a special guest with us today. Been a long time coming. We've been highly anticipating having the writer of Flash, Jeremy Adams, join us. Jeremy, thanks for taking the time.
Hello. Thank you guys so much for having me. This is great. I feel
very
lucky.
Rocky was so over the moon to have you on. He's such a huge fan of your Flash run. Myself as well. But in the interest of full disclosure, I gotta say that my Flash is Barry Allen. Not that I don't love Wally West.
No, I'm just joking.
I have no idea who that is.
I'm just joking. Where is Barry Allen right now? I mean, those are some of the questions that you'll probably want to know that I will not be able to tell you.
We would never ask something so spoilery, but let me ask you. I mean, obviously you grew up reading comics. You're a fan. Do you prefer one over the other?
What's so funny about it is that I prefer Wally just in terms of kind of the shenanigans and the silliness. And I've really grown to love him over the course of getting involved in writing him. Obviously my first interaction with the Flash is Barry Allen. I'm not going to lie. I mean, as a young kid, I was trying to figure out what combination of chemicals would possibly make me go super fast. And in fact, I think, it was that original Flash TV series. I mean, you got them in the Super Friends and stuff, but the original Flash TV series with that Danny Elfman music, and it was just so cool, and I really loved that. But it wasn't until at the age in which it was probably more formative, and even into the animated universe, that Wally West really grew on me. And now it's like, I'm married with 2 kids. Wally's married with 2 kids. There's a lot of similarities there. There's a lot that I find myself loving about the character, and feeling like this is what I tell DC like every 5 minutes. I'm sure they're sick of me asking them, like, I can't. This is not a once a month book. There's just too much. I mean, there's too many rogues. There's too many characters. There's too many family members. Like, to me, I feel like I would love to do it. I would love to do it weekly, but that's just me. But I love Wally in a way because he is so different than most characters right now. Like, how many characters do you know have a family, in the DC universe, and have kids, and they're not dead, and they're not, that's not driving their vengeance or whatever. It's kind of refreshing to me. I mean, he's probably the most mature of the, even though he's silly and he's a dad or whatever, but like, he's the only one kind of living his life while still being a superhero.
Well, you've got you got 2 daughters yourself, do you not, Jeremy?
I do.
And how old are they? Are they the same age as Jay and Irie? How old are they?
I mean, they're not twins, but they're 8 and 5, right. And they are pistols. And obviously, I'm sure you've heard that, like, with the daughter, the particular issue that was the one with Ira and Dr. Nightmare, that was only born out of the fact that, like, I was on a call with my editor and I hung up, and then my oldest daughter, for like 45 minutes, like, Dad, this is what you should do. And she just starts rambling. And I'm like, well, you should write a comic. And then it's like, no, you should write a comic with me. And so I called the editor and I said, hey, could Charlotte write a comic with me? And at the time they said yes. So we broke out the whiteboard. We did 3 acts. I got snacks, and she started coming up with, like, Dr. Nightmare, and here are the drawings for the characters and all this stuff. And it was so fun. And then they told me they legally couldn't put her name on it, which just crushed me. But I paid her. and she's still like, instant capitalist. Like, it was like, oh, what? Huh? Like, now she's, and then my 5-year-old's like, when do I get to write a comic? And I'm like, uh-oh, this is a problem. But I have 2 kids. And so some of the antics that they pull will probably make their way into the book itself.
Well, I got to tell you, because the way that you script, I mean, I think it's the perfect fit for Wally, because, like I say, you're a family man, and the emphasis on family that's coming through on the Flash is just, I mean, it's absolutely wonderful. And the way that you're juxtaposing the story of the Flash in his with his adventures with JL Dark against Eclipso, with Irie and Mackenzie, is it?
No, Maxine.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's Maxine Baker. I mean,
Yeah.
that's that's just inspired. I'm wondering, are their stories going to link at some point, or are they both on their own individual hero's journey, so to speak?
Well, wait, have you guys read 778 then?
I have, yes, and we can
talk
about this.
Everybody that's listening. So this is dropping on the Thursday after 778 just came out. So
you can talk about
it has been out for a couple of days.
Yeah, so by the end of 778, we know that canonically, Jay had the ability to kind of sense danger with his dad, and so now he knows that his dad's in trouble. Now, what comes of that, we'll find out in the next issue. But obviously, this is a longer. Started with the Glaive landing in Central City and Eclipso taking over a Star Eater. I'm blanking, but that's when it started, and a lot of questions that people had about, Wally and his invulnerability to that, and Wally and Gemworld and all that stuff will be answered. And then yes, it's going to link up with Jay and Irie. That's going to be part of that. And the solicits show the cover. Covers always ruin things, but I would be a fool not to have that opportunity to do that. And I think one of the things I wanted to do with Wally is, if you read Williamson's run, he was doing, I think it was either a weekly or a bi-monthly comic, and he had so many characters, and it was so it all took place in like Central City and Keystone, and I was just like, I really want to go Doctor Who with this. I really want to go crazy with it because, I think the Flash is a hard character power set wise to write because he's so powerful. I mean, the honest truth is that here you have a guy that almost has an infinite amount of speed. So really, what's a guy with a boomerang going to be able to do to him? Yeah. So I think, taking him out of his comfort zone, putting him in different worlds, having him fight magic, different things like that is going to be a real important part of the series. And also, I like Linda, and I like, the kids, and we already hint at that Linda is trying to make a transition from being a journalist into something else. And I think that's going to play into the book, because I think we have enough love interests in the DC world that are all journalists, and so I think it'll be kind of fun to kind of go, I'm trying not, like, what am I spoiling? Like, to go a little like Kathleen Turner romancing the stone with her a little bit, and awesome. And really give her something else. And by not the end of 778, but by the end of 779, there's a big thing that we reveal with Linda. So that's people will enjoy that.
I have to ask one question here. And,
and
that is that Maxine Baker.
Yeah.
Is it?
You are
Buddy Baker's. That's Buddy Baker's daughter.
Animal Man's daughter.
Okay. So So now I'm not asking you to give anything away, but she was Avatar of the Red at one point in the New 52, and I know that the DC Omniverse is still forming here, but do you got something in the works with Maxine? Can we expect some surprises with her character?
I will tell you that I am like, everything I do is geared toward trying to force DC to give me another book.
Okay. Animal Man it is.
The reality is that you have Maxine, who, the other Animal Man has always been a pretty heavy book in some ways. And I wanted to make Maxine kind of, this is the oldest reference ever that no one watching this will get, but the Eddie Haskell, the kind of like,
Leave It to Beaver.
And she's kind of like Tom Sawyer in a way. Like, she can get out of trouble. She's fast talking, whatever. But it's interesting because by 778 you see that she has, well, I shouldn't say that. If you watch the moments that she has moments of like, oh, somebody's coming to the door or whatever, you will see in those frames a cat. You know, you will see different things. So we're hinting at the fact that, you know, she might be a chip off the old block. And to me, if you got, you know, because the reality, like, Young Justice is not that young anymore. You know, they're like older. And I'm like, well, who are the other heroes that exist that are kids? And so I've been playing around with that in my head. And it's not that I'm not doing a Young Justice, even if I beg them. But I would love to do something with some kids. That would be really fun for me, I think.
Well, you did Teen Titans Go. You worked on Teen Titans Go.
Yeah. I helped write Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans, the movie. And obviously my background is in mostly animation, and it really started really my career started picking up doing Lego direct to DVD movies. Lego Flash, Lego Shazam, and Lego Shazam has one of the best jokes, and it wasn't even for me, it was my mentor named Jim Krieg. And that we do this total copy of Superman, the Richard Donner Superman, where Perry White is like slapping down like the newspapers, and it's like, who is he? What's his name? Look at that jaw. It's like made out of marble. Maybe his name's Captain Marvel, you know? And it was like, it was the only time we could get close to Captain Marvel because they don't use it anymore, which drives me nuts too. So yeah, so I think I have a predilection for that. But obviously, you know, The Flash to me is a book that you're not going to get in trouble if your mom catches you reading it, you know? Like, this is a family book. This is a book geared for everybody, which I personally think that there's not enough books like that. I think that,
Agreed.
You know, if comics aren't careful, they're going to age out their audience. And I think it's important to make, you know, all different types, because I guarantee you with the upcoming Flashpoint Beyond, that is not a kid book. And so that's going to be a different, you know, a different tenor and a different vibe for what I've done in comics. But I've only been doing comics when this drops, it'll only be 1 year. I mean, that'll be my first year doing comics. So
yeah, I mean, you had a couple things in yeah, I was going to say you have a couple things in Future State that we'll touch on later. But the other thing I wanted to mention about Flash, you talk about making it a family book and the ideas that you have. I can completely understand why you would want to do it weekly, because you have so many ideas. Because here's the thing about the Flash, like you were talking about how powerful he is. It isn't just that he's got an infinite amount of speed. His ability to travel to all the different parts of the multiverse, the Omniverse, which is such a huge thing right now with what Joshua Williamson is doing. We had, you know, the button before during Josh's run with Rebirth. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. That's got to be challenging as well, because at some point, you know, like for example, the upcoming War for Earth 3, where I don't know how much you're involved in that, but it's got to be a challenge, because at any point it can be like, okay, there's this really big multiversal thing going on because of who Wally is. His book has to be involved, and that can, you know, not derail your plans, but you've got to make room for that, right? That's got to be challenging.
Yeah, it is super challenging. And it's also super challenging because, you know, you have so many masters above you, and there's like a bunch of ideas that I have that I'm like so desperate about, you know, ideas that like when I think it was 769, I think it was Flash 769, which is like the second Flash book I did with Gold Beetle. And there's a moment where Wally whispers something to Gold Beetle's ear, and it's like, I haven't even paid that off. You know,
yeah.
it's just like a mystery box that I know what I want to do, and I'm desperate to do it. I just got to convince people to let me do it. And you know, there's a lot of me convincing, and then suddenly they'll go, you know, you'll get on this momentum, and then they'll be like, hey, War for Earth 3. And that was something that originally I was going to be involved in, and then I wasn't going to be involved in, and now I'm involved in again. So, you know, it's going to still connect. That issue is definitely going to be, well, it's written by me. My issue will be, and it'll be a Flash book that has some connection to what's happening with that, with Robbie's book and Tim's book. So with Suicide Squad and Teen Titans Academy. But you can tell.
you enjoy working with those guys? Has it been a fun collaboration?
Well, Tim and I are really good friends, and we started in Justice League Action together. That's where we had met each other. This really great action cartoon series, if you know, that was on like 7 a.m. Network just kind of scuttled it. But it's a fantastic series if you ever get a chance to see it. I had this one Mr. Miracle episode where I made Mr. Miracle more like I was like, what if Mr. Miracle was like Jeff Goldblum as a magician? You know, like yeah, and he was just really peculiar and you know, getting on Batman's cape because Batman grabbed his cape. He's like, the cape code. What about the cape code? You know, like all these weird things. It's a real fun series that Tim and I met each other on. And then Tim and I had been working, if you look at the kind of output of the Warner Animation Group, Tim had done Long Halloween 1 and 2 and a Batman or a Superman. And then I had done, you know, Batman Soul of the Dragon and JSA and some other ones coming up, which is exciting. There's a bunch of movies coming up. So Tim and I know each other really, really well. So him and I are easy to work with each other. Robbie's really great, and Robbie worked on Supernatural, though I didn't know him when I was at Supernatural. But a super nice guy, really talented. So he had a really big idea for this thing, and it's cool to be able to. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a huge nerd, man. Like I'm a huge fanboy. So like the fact that we're sitting here talking about this, that I'm looking at myself when I was 8 and I just had every comic that I thought was worth something up on the wall, pinned to the wall. You know, it was always like the foil cover, or like I would get the number ones and they would be like Impact Comics, The Fly. It's like no one cares about this, but it was a number one, it goes on the wall, you know, and so to think that like all that stuff is now they're letting me write something. It's been really awesome. So I'm hoping that I can write more books. I would love to get into like independent, like my own comic books at some point. Mm-hmm. But comics are an expensive endeavor, you know, and they're expensive to buy. I mean, that's the other thing that drives me nuts. I'm like, oh, bring back the spinner racks. Let's get these prices down for people. But yeah, so I don't know what we're talking about, but I just derailed because I'm hyper.
Well, let me ask you this: is you say you're good friends with Tim Sheridan? Yeah. I know Jay and Irie sort of made a quick appearance at Teen Titans Academy. Yeah. Can we expect them to be students at Teen Titans Academy, or is that just that just a cameo?
I mean, maybe. I don't know Tim's plans for the Academy going forward. I mean, Tim. This is what's so funny is Tim, to a degree, is the one that is carrying his book. Is the one that directly ties into Future State in a way that I think a lot of people just kind of like swept Future State aside. So what's really cool about what Tim's doing is he is playing a very long game with his story. And it really started in Teen Titans Future State. And also my book, the Black Adam Future State, tied into the Shazam book because you had young Black Adam appear. Because when Black Adam gets sent back through time, we came up with this cockamamie idea that Black Adam would be young, but he would have all the knowledge of his future self. And the whole point is that he needs to stop the unkindness, which is a character I created for Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans, the movie. So it's all very convoluted. I mean, maybe someday somebody will read the trades and go, oh, this all makes sense. But
I didn't know that. I didn't know the unkindness originated in Teen Titans Go. Really? Wow.
Yes. Yeah, so I was brought in and we were sitting there with Raven in the Teen Titans Go universe, and she has to do a bunch of stuff. And I was talking to the director, and I go, do you know what a group of ravens are called? And he's like, you know, everybody says a murder. I was like, no, those are crows. Those are crows. You know, a group of ravens is called an unkindness. And so she ends up swallowing all her versions and becomes this super, you know, powerful kaiju. And so we're like, oh, this would be cool when we're talking about Future State. It's like something that is absorbing everything in the universe. And then it gave us a good kind of palette to you know, do the Black Adam stuff, which was interesting. But of course, for me, I was stunned they let me do Gold Beetle. I thought, oh, there's no way they're gonna let me do a derivation on two of my favorite characters ever, and she's gonna just be completely wonky, total bananas. And that's kind of she's kind of the River Song of my Flash series, but she's like the River Song in terms of like ideally it would be cool if Flash met her out of time and then different time zones, and then I have big plans for her. I love her. I think she's funny. It's sort of like in Robbie's Suicide Squad when he started using Ambush Bug. It's like, oh my gosh, it's such a release to be able to have a character like that to total play with things. But Wally's pretty funny too. I mean, but Wally's much more like me, which is like dad humor, like dad jokes. He's always going to have kind of a grin on his face, even when he's getting beat to death, but because, and part of that is because, the history of the character is, tragedy for, and I say that, but it's really only been a year that I've been writing Wally. And before that, he had just had tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. And so my thing was like, if I just don't kick the dog, it'll be great. Like, if I keep Wally up and, keep his family intact. And I always say it as like both a threat and an incentive. I'm like, listen, as long as I'm riding him, he's not going to die. He's going to be great. I can't say the same if the sales drop and they kick me off the book. You never know what'll happen to Wally.
Yeah, it's interesting because that first arc, you're talking about wanting to pay things off, and obviously Gold Beetle shows up, and I mean Fernando Passeron did a fantastic job on the designs for those future Superman, and you could just tell you guys had a lot of fun on that Black Adam book, and Gold Beetle is fantastic. But we had seen somewhat of a redemption for Wally in the Flash Forward miniseries, but when you came on that first arc you did where he's bouncing through time again, not to beat a dead horse here, but so many eras of things that you could explore. You established so much. I'm sure you have tons of ideas to go back to those particular eras with Wally. But it was in a lot of ways a redemption story, because at the end he ends up jumping to that scene, that iconic scene in from Tom King rather's Heroes in Crisis.
Yeah.
So even though there had been an attempt to redeem, it wasn't to that point, because again, Rocky's a giant Wally West fan.
You deserve a medal for that issue. Thank you.
He was over the moon with like, okay, we had Flash Forward, it kind of half-assed the redemption of, but when that, when your arc ended, when your arc paid off, he was like, that's it, Wally's redeemed, he's back, and it's
I could move on. I could move on.
Exactly. You gave Rocky closure, but it sort of ties into a line that we just had in this week's issue, where Wally himself tells Dark Opal, he asks like, "Who are you?" And Wally, in his own words, he even knows it. It's kind of meta. He's like, "I am hope."
Yeah,
I am the hope of the DC. So as a Wally guy, like, how satisfying was it for you to finish that first arc and really truly, explain that, man, this wasn't Wally's fault?
Right. I mean, the funny thing is Williamson had kind of explained the cover-up not being his fault, but it was very brief. I think it was Reverse Flash had said it to Barry rather than Wally, but I'm not entirely. There's a lot, but what was really satisfying for me was when they asked me. I got a call and it was like, "Hey, would you be interested in writing the Flash? Do you have any ideas?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, do I have ideas? Let's do this. We could do Quantum Leap. I had 1,000 ideas. The first idea was crazy, by the way. It was like they stopped me from doing it, but it was basically that Wally shows up at the house, and or Linda is with Wally and the kids, and there's a knock at the door, and it's Wally West, and he's like, "I've been trapped in the Speed Force. I don't know who that guy is." Wow. And they were just like, "Okay, you're coming out of the gate, really." I was like, "No, man, it'd be awesome." And I had this great, backstory stuff. But part of it when addressing Wally for me was just that was obviously that's the elephant in the room. And I think Heroes in Crisis is a great book. I just think it's hard for any of us when we love a character and to see that character do something that like you would think my character wouldn't do that. I mean, that's the whole crux behind Star Wars, right? Like it's the thing that people are arguing about Luke Skywalker. It's like, no, Luke wouldn't do that. I don't understand, So that's, and luckily I'm in the position I can kind of go, I don't understand that. And now so part of it was like I had to address that, and that was my on-ramp because it gave me a chance, because I knew that also the different speedsters were doing different things, and I wanted to be able to touch on that and touch on how big the Flash world is. But when I got Fernando's pencils for the 9-panel grid, where it's just like Heroes in Crisis, except he's talking about hope and he's talking about dropping the rock and everything that Roy had taught him. I knew, I was like, oh my gosh, this feels really cool. This feels cool that, and I begged them to let me have him save everybody, and they were like, no. And I was like, but we'll give you Roy. I was like, fine, I'll take Roy. I'll have that moment with Roy. But then it was like, as I'm going through it, it's like, it became so emotional for Roy, because it was like him saying goodbye to Ollie and him, uttering that he loves his daughter and like all this stuff. And it was really, it was really cool for me to be able to be a part of that. And the pencils were unbelievable, so and it was a bit of a moving target as we got close to it, because Savitar, we knew there was going to be a big bad that was coming out of it, but I had a bunch of different ideas of different characters I wanted it to be, and so we ended up circling around it, and then it ended up being Savitar, which made more sense at the end of the day. But like I said, I feel like the Flash is this, I feel like it's this giant universe. I mean, there's so many speedsters, and there's so many characters, and there's so many villains, and there's so much mythology, and it's just, if there's 15 Bat books, you would think that, there should be at least 3, like, wouldn't you want to see a Jay Garrick World War II? Just, that's it. Week in, week out, like Jay Garrick in World War II, I would totally buy that, or, I would love to see more of Bart. And because of that, I've obviously, my issues have been much more like setting up what his life is like in Central City, his family, and then we go on these big like 6-issue stretches or 3 or 4 issue stretches for a bigger thing, and then we'll go back to kind of like small one-offs, because I have some really fun ideas for one-offs, and then go back to kind of serialized. And that's kind of how I want to push forward on it. But I also think there are things that I want to know. Like, I want to know, what is Wally's relationship with Wallace, and that's something that I'm going to address coming up, because I was like, wait, does, because everything matters, and everything, the universe is so intense, and you're like, wait, but Wallace is kind of a hiccup, but now he's the cousin of Wally, and you're like, okay, I need to have like a diagram to like figure it all out.
And we haven't seen him in a while. We haven't seen Wallace in a while.
Right. We haven't seen him in a while. He's been at Teen Titans Academy, and I just thought, oh man, I would love to play with that character a little bit. I think one of the things I really love is to use and look at characters that maybe aren't being used at like that much, and seeing if I can play with them and see if there are things that make it pop. Like Mr. Terrific, to me, I'm like, I'm just trying to make him, I'm pushing him to Buckaroo Banzai-ville. Like, to me, it's like, he's not just a scientist. He's like this guy that has like an oil franchise. Like, he's not totally a Vulcan, which everybody writes him kind of as a Vulcan. And that's kind of his character. But I also was like, well, but give him a little bit of, he's a rich dude. Like, he can write a check.
As a further compliment to you, I noticed in Tom Taylor's Nightwing number 88, Flash and Mr. Terrific showed up there to help Nightwing out, and Tom Taylor, I thought, did a nice job capturing the voice that you have given Wally.
Great job.
It was a really good job.
Yeah, he did a great job. He wrote me and he asked if Flash could join in the fun. I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so it was really cool to be able to have him do that. But back to your other question, Jace, was about all the thing you're paying off. Like, he has a job with Mr. Terrific, and they're working on this temporal device and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, but now he has to go do this, like that. Now he's off world, and then it's like, oh no, and then after that we have to do a War for Earth 3, and then we have to do, a couple other things that
the Justice League is dead. Right. Tell me it's Barry Allen that dies and not Wally West.
Listen, I don't know, because when I look at those coffins, I don't see anybody with a Flash symbol on it.
Woo! Well, good. That's good news.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect DC to kill
Barry Allen too. Like, I think Barry. Wouldn't it be cool if you did like a 2 a month? You could have one that's Barry and one that's Wally. It just seems.
Yeah,
like
again,
Rocky's like Barry, whatever, Barry.
Whatever.
But to your point, I mean, there's just not enough room, because you mentioned Quantum Leap. That's sort of what we got in that first arc with him jumping from time period to time period. But then, we know it was Savitar, but you haven't been able to go back to that.
Yeah. To be fair,
can I say
the Savitar of it? Like, at the end, he gets sucked into a portal, and I was told that he was going to be, show up somewhere else. And I'm like, okay, so I guess I don't have to worry about that, but people, so there's a little bit of like trying to connect the dots, and like, okay, who's doing what, and then trying to reach out to them. And everybody's been incredibly nice, but I also feel like this is the first year where you feel like, after all the hiccups, DC is like, Future State was a thing, and you need events for your book line, I think, to keep people interested. But I don't know. I want it to mean something a little bit,
No, that's 100% valid, and obviously, it did mean something. We talked about the redemption of Wally. So when that dropped, it certainly seemed to me that people were much more in the Rocky camp, that they just loved it. So was the reaction? I mean, how was it for you? I mean, were Wally fans really happy?
It's weird, because it's like, I'm a comic fan, and comic fans online aren't the nicest sometimes,
right?
But because some of my friends just get, it's terrible, and I'm sure when like the Batman book thing comes out, like, there will be people that are just gonna be angry, but I've got nothing but love, and I feel terrible about it. Like, because I've been operating in like genre stuff for a while now. So when I was on Supernatural, I'll give you an example. When I was on Supernatural, well, before that, when I was doing Scooby-Doo stuff, this is the funny thing, as a writer, especially in animated or live action stuff, you write something and then it goes through like a bunch of different hands, so it's not going to be your pure script is going to appear on the screen. But anyways, I wrote the Scooby-Doo stuff, and then it was like immediately getting tweets. It's like, you've ruined my childhood, and I'm like, really? Okay, I don't know what to tell you, and so I thought I had known kind of anger, and then I got on Supernatural, and that was another thing where it was like, we do 22 episodes, certain actors are only contracted for a certain amount of episodes, like a certain amount of episodes, and they're like, we're using that guy in the important episodes. Jeremy, your episodes aren't important. And I'm like, well, to me they are, but I understand what you're saying, like, it's not critical to the overall plot. But I ended up doing these really fun episodes that fans were really upset. Why do you hate this person? Why aren't they there? And I'm like, this has nothing to do with me. Like, so I was ready for the deluge of just hatred. But instead, it's like, I feel like I'm the Pope. Like, people have been really, really nice, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. But I got to tell you, I'm not gonna lie, the pressure is building, because you can't do that forever, right? So and also, And also, like, I love this comic because it's a throwback comic. It's a comic that I would read when I was 10. There is fun and adventure and excitement. And yeah, it's not adult. It's not like the threat isn't so much that you're like, oh my gosh, this is dark and twisted. It's not. I mean, it's not. Maybe it will be in the future, but at that point, I think people will hate me. But right now, this is like turning on an episode of the A-Team. You're like, I know what's going to happen. They're going to get locked in a shed and they're going to make something awesome, you know, and they're going to break Murdoch out of the insane asylum. Like, so I kind of want to make the Flash like comfort food, funny, exciting, but I also am like, these weird things have happened. Like I've fallen in love with those kids. Like, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I really like these kids. And I really like Linda, and I really like this kind of, you know, Incredibles type family. It's like, oh, well, maybe the Flash is like the Fantastic Four of DC. I don't know, you know, like what are they? I don't know, but it's been really, really, really fun to play with it and see where it goes. Again, they could fire me tomorrow. Who knows? So
well,
it's all about sales, you know.
I don't think that's going to happen because it has been so fun. And again, you're tapping into what's best about Wally. Why a lot of people just love. He's their favorite DC character. It's that idea of hope and positivity, and you know it comes through in the book and the way you're doing it. Talk to us a little bit about the issue where you had to turn the book as you were reading it. 'Cause that was a really fun idea. Like how did you come up with that?
So it was born out of like I read a lot of kids books to my kids, right? And there are books like that do little things. But what had happened was I had just had an image in my head of I don't know if I had seen a movie or something where somebody had talked to the audience. And I go, gosh, it would be so cool if like there was a wizard that like turned around and like talked to the audience and said, you need to do this. But the key for me, and it's so earnest, I mean, it's such an earnest comic book, but I'm such an earnest person, is like going, you have to do this. You have to believe this is real in order to have the fun, you know? It drives me crazy because again, they did some things like they put the house ads, like turn the page and there's a house ad. I'm like, what are you doing to me? Or the digital stuff, I beg them ahead of time. But again, we're just on a boat and we're going. So, but yeah, so I had like printed it out. Okay, this is what it's going to need to be. Wait, if we flip it this way, we have to change the pages, and then then I don't know why they agreed to it. I love gimmick stuff. I every once in a while, it's like that's a fun thing to experience as a comic. And then I gave it to Fernando. I'm like, this is kind of what I want or whatever. And Fernando, I'm so lucky that my first time out, I got Fernando on Future State because I love him. And he's from Spain, and he has to like translate everything I say, but it is like he reads my brain. And then he does it 1,000 times better. But there was, like I said, oh, these like little gremlins are coming out after them. And then I get this sheet back with like 600 gremlins. And I'm like, like I'm feeling bad. Like I overworked him, but that's just how he is. He's over. I mean, everything is so detailed. It reminds me when I read X-Men with Jim Lee the first time, it was like, it's so slick. It's so well done. The colors are so well. And so, you know, getting it and then like seeing my nephew do it and just seeing him reading it and suddenly he's like, you know, and then he's like, you know, and I'm like, oh, that was great. You know, this is so fun. I'm having so much fun to see.
I got to tell you, there's that comic where I had Dr. Fate was in it, and I was looking for the icons.
Yeah,
I had to flip back. I was when it was funny because Jason and I, when in our reviews, I joked that it took me 15 minutes to find those 3 icons. 15 minutes. It took me a long time, and I thought I got to be going crazy. I finally found them, but I was so glad I found them. And then when I found them, I go, how could I have missed them? But I actually quite enjoyed that. But
I had the same feeling because I told Fernando to put them in, and then I got the pages, and I'm like, you didn't put them in. And he's like, no, they're there. I'm like, they are? And I went back, and then it was like, but where? I can see like one, and then I get the color proof, and I'm still like, guys, I think you guys screwed up. I think you messed it up. And then it was like, and then when you see it, you're right. It's like when you see it, you're like, oh my gosh, because I was terrified. I can't tell you how many times one of the books have come out with like there's a spelling error or a coloring error or something, and I just like, oh, it breaks my heart. And so with this one, I had like videotaped myself like, this is what it needs to look like when we turn the page. Like I gave him like 10 different ways to please don't screw it up. And so when it happened, I was like scared to death because I saw a tweet that was like, I can't find these things. And I'm like, oh no, because it's one thing to get you to, do whatever with the book. But then the kicker for me was like, and now you have to go back and you have to find those things. And it was such a funny thing to do, but it was fun. It was fun. Again, those are kind of the weirdo, I mean, I'm sure you guys are the same way. Like you've read comics for so many years and you think, man, I wish I'd see this, or I wish I'd do this. And then it's like, now I'm here. And they're like, how many ideas? I'm like, I've got like 40 years worth of ideas. So I don't know. Like we can keep going, it's great. It's great fun.
It is.
Well, the other thing is that, as a long time and you can tell us if this was purposeful. The fact that it's Dr. Fate, right? And there used to be some Dr. Fate backups in the Flash books.
Yes.
But it was like a modern, like I love the fact that Fernando put him in like high top, Chuck Taylor's. That was so cool. I was like, that just looks so cool. It's like a more modern costume. And yeah, I mean his art is just fantastic. But little things like that, like of course it's Dr. Fate, because back in the day that was the backup in the Flash. So it's just fun. It's just fun.
I love it. And like I said, I mean, and if you read those old Flash books, they're crazy bananas. So anybody can't say to me like, oh, your book's too, Flash is about him running around the street fighting crime. I'm like, no, it's not. Like there was like these, like underneath Central City, there's aliens that had like landed there. I mean, it's bananas. Like it's bananas. And they used to have the best covers back in the day.
Right.
And that
Carmen Infantino, Flash looks pregnant.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, all of them did, like Batman and Superman or whatever. But I remember saying, Brendan had done the one with, the right here in the background where Dr. Fake's like pulling the comic away and Flash is like that. And then when Jorge I think came in and did the other one where it's like him reading the book with it on the cover, I was like, oh, that's all I want, is that like weird meta acknowledgement, and then just try to make it fit within that. It is a one and done book, but it tangentially is connected. It's like having it a two-dimensional causeway to me. It's like, that's awesome. Now I've added that to the sandbox. That is a thing, that anybody else could do at any time, which I thought was fun. Now, it was funny. My brother, I literally was going to end it with them just getting out in Gem World. But my brother was like, oh, Jeremy, I just hate it when it's like, like I'm the one reading it. Like he was the one who goes, just make one of the characters reading the book, just give it to, and I was like, okay, I'll give it to Amethyst. I kind of played both sides there. So it's like, she's the one who's like, oh, and again, Amethyst and Gem World's like one of those things I always thought, why haven't they done, I mean, they've done reboots every once in a while, but when you go back to the original Amethyst of Gem World, it's like, that to me is, why hasn't that been a major motion picture? It's crazy to me. It's like a little girl that becomes a big warrior princess in a fantasy land. Like it's crazy. Anyways, I'm rambling again. Sorry. You can tell this is how I write this book.
No, it's fantastic. But I do want to touch on some other things. But Rocky, did you have any other Flash questions before we touch on some other topics?
Not specific Flash questions. I will ask this: is there what's the first thing you read? Like what's on top of your read pile every week? I'm curious. Like are there top three? Your top.
Oh my gosh.
For DC that you read other than DC? Yourself.
Oh, that was a good clarifier. Because if you didn't say DC, I'd be like, oh man, did you read Jason Aaron's Thor run? It's like or like Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil is like, well, that was great. My stuff is. I try to hit Williamson's stuff because professionally he's kind of the one leading the pack in, like, what is he? He's writing like 50 books. I don't know.
Right.
Like, but I feel like they're all connected. I really like his Robin run right now just because I'm a huge martial art nerd. So that's kind of fun. For the DC stuff, I love Tom Taylor stuff. I love everybody's stuff, but I'm so behind. Like I'm also really behind, and I'm doing a lot of like catch up on like the DC Infinite app. You would think they would give me free comics, but no. So I'm also by the way, it's like I feel like it's my obligation to go back and try to read, and I have read a ton of Flash books, but like to go back and there's a lot of Flash books. Yeah. So, I'm like, but we're getting closer to 800. I mean, 800 books of anything is crazy. And, who knows if they're going to let me stay on this thing. I keep telling them, like, well, they're like, at one point, I think they were like, well, we only want people to be on a book for like a year and a half. And I'm like, nope. I was like, you literally have to say you're fired.
I got to tell you something. It's so good to hear you say that. It's so refreshing to hear that you actually feel a little bit of an obligation to go back and read other Flash books. I mean, because, as a reader and just a lifelong reader for 40 plus years, man, sometimes I wonder, there's occasionally a writer comes along and I wonder, have they ever read any past issues of this character? And not only is your run great, but the fact that you're volunteering that, you're very passionate. It just oozes out of this interview, and I love it.
Oh, well, thank you. But I mean, like I said, there's so much to mine in the Flash books. Williamson's run alone has so many speedsters, but like Wade's run had so much heart and pathos, and like it's just, I don't know. There's so many cool things to do with it, but also I'm one of those guys that wants everything to make sense a little bit too. So I'm in the chaotic continuity of DC Comics, and they were kind of like, yeah, you can kind of pick and choose of which continuity works. I'm like, okay, all right, this is fine, and this is fine, and it's interesting. But I do have like this second year, if I can get past all the tie-ins, I have some really cool Flash centric, neat ideas, stuff that I think will spawn 1,000 other ideas. But it's been fun, and honestly, I think the feeling when I got Flash, it did seem like no one really cared that much. So it's been really remarkable to see people being excited about it, and people talking about it, and people encouraging people to get it. And then, and it's been doing well, and I think, they don't tell me the exact numbers, but people will always be like, no, it's doing well. It's selling out of my store. What I'm like, oh, great. I would love to know the exact numbers so I can see what I need to do. But by and large, I'll give my editors credit. They've really left me to my own devices, for a lot of stuff. And then, they've told me like, oh, by the way, soon you're going to have to tie into this or tie into that. I'm like, okay, just let me know.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that you've brought Wally back as the Flash, as the headliner of the book. And like we said earlier, Wally, in his own words, is talking about he's the hope in the DC universe, which to me, when you talk about the different runs, obviously going all the way back to the first Flash post-crisis from Mike Baron, and even before, Wally was sort of a depressing character. He was dealing with that he wasn't that fast anymore, and then we found out it was all psychological because he was just so depressed and down on himself after Barry had died. And then even those early Mike Baron runs with his parents and the animosity between it wasn't a fun book. But as other writers came in, and the Wade era and Geoff Johns era, Wally really grew, and I think a lot of people grew up with him, and I think that's why he's so beloved. But I mean, that Geoff Johns run for me is that and the Wade run. But you're about to embark on another project, and again, we know you probably can't say a lot, but you're about to embark on another project with Geoff, that is very much at the heart of Flash, because it's Flashpoint, which was the whole thing that kicked off the new 52 and started all the books over. What can you tell us other than you must be having a blast doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I had never met Geoff, and he's been an incredible collaborator. Tim and I and Geoff have just been kicking around ideas, and what can I tell you about it? What can I tell you about it? I will tell you that I'm absolutely in awe of Zermanico's artwork for the 6 issues. It is hard to describe, but it is. This is how it feels a lot of times being a comic writer. It's like, why am I here? Because these guys are so good. They're just magic people, and I get this, and I'm like, I gotta just take more words out because it's just too pretty, or whatever, right. or they drew it so well. It's like, I don't need to say like stop, knave, or whatever. It's like it's all there. It's all in the artwork, and he's been remarkable. I will tell you that I think it's an interesting story. And it is full of emotion, and it's playing in that universe in a way. Oh man, I can't tell you anything. I really can't. It's like, and you probably get the impression that that's like killing me, and so again, it's a collaboration. So I have to sublimate some of my more fun and hopeful impulses for this book, because that's not what this book is, but that's okay. I mean, I'm a varied writer that has done many different things, and so it's important for me, just as a writer, to do something a little more adult, and that's what this book is.
That's good. Well, now I'm really curious.
Yeah.
Well, let me see if I can ask an extremely vague question, but that might give us a little bit of info. Not that I'm trying to trick you.
Sure.
Do you feel like the story that you, Tim and Geoff, are telling, is it paying off maybe some threads that were left dangling with Flashpoint in the beginning of the New 52, or is it? Or do you feel it's more building towards something for the future, or is it both?
I plead the fifth. I feel like I'm gonna get in trouble.
Wow.
I feel like I'm gonna get assassinated, through a window. You're just gonna see blood splatter on this camera. I probably already said too much in this interview, and now I'm fired. Like, I turn around and it's like, oh, you got an email. How did you know?
Yeah, now we're going to bring in Geoff.
Yeah. And Geoff's
been waiting in the wings.
The test, sir. That's funny. I mean, he is very clever, and Tim is very heartfelt, and I feel like I'm very much like I said, I'm a logic whore, and I'm also I want things to make sense. I also like big ideas. So it all seems to work well together. We'll see if it works at the end of the day. I think you see in the previews, though, you see like that. I don't know if you've parsed the whiteboard that Geoff put in issue 0 that has all sorts of things on it. And I think those are all Geoff kind of like, we could do 1,000 things from this, and
that's the problem with Geoff. He's got so many ideas, and when he puts out stuff like that, you never know what's actually going to make it in the story and what had to get cut. So it's like,
I remember, I'm trying to think. I think it was Stephen Moffat or one of the producers of Doctor Who a long time ago, and I remember reading an interview with them, and I loved it. And if I ever get a significant amount of success, and I'm going to exactly. He said, "Oh, I lie continually." Like, he's like, I lie in every interview. I lie about everything. He's like, so if I do slip up, no one will know because I've lied about everything happening in the book. I was like, that's genius.
Yep. Everything's got to be taken with a grain of salt. I don't know if you know Dinesh Shamdasani, formerly Valiant. Now he's got Bad Idea. He's the same way. you never know what are the truths and where he's pulling your leg, because he does it with a straight face. So you never know with that guy. It's kind of
That's awesome. I wish I could be more
well.
like that.
Let me let you off the hook and ask you about something that you can talk about, because it's already out and we've read it. We touched on the Black Adam stuff for Future State. We talked a lot about Flash. One thing we haven't mentioned is the other Future State story that you got to do, which was a new version of Black Racer. This Jack Kirby fourth world character you kind of modernized. Again, something I'd love to see you go back to, because we barely got the seeds of the story, but how rewarding was it, or how much fun was it to take a Kirby? I mean, one of the greatest comic creators of all time. It had to be in a way intimidating, I would imagine. Like, what was your feeling? Was it more fun? Was it challenging? How was that project?
Was fun. I mean, you can tell between so the future the story, I don't know if you know the story, but the story not about that, but like the way I got involved was there was a call from DC to the animation department at Warner Brothers, and we have a pretty good reputation in the animation world of doing faithful adaptations and really cool versions of comic books and stuff like that. So they said, hey, we want some writers to come over. And so, me and a couple of Tim and a couple of Megan Fitzmartin, who's on who I've worked with a lot, who's on Batman Urban Legends or whatever. We all went into a room, and there's Dan Didio, and he is just like, he's like super energy, and he's like, we're gonna do this thing called 5G, and he's like pulling it up, and I'm just like, I don't know what's happening, and so he's saying all this stuff, and then we leave, and it was funny because I met Tim and my friend at a bar afterwards, and I walk in, and they're like, well, what do you think, Jeremy? I'm like, what do I think? If someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes. Like, I'm like, just anything. And so then I thought, this is it. This is my dream. I'm going to be able to do a comic book. And then it all blew up. And then Dan left, and I was like, oh man. And then my editor at the time, Mike Cotton, he was talking with Tim, and he said, hey, I got this list of writers. What do you think of these writers? And he's like, oh, Jeremy's great. And so he called me, but I was also still in contact with the editor for the World the Superman one.
Right, World at War.
Yeah. World at War.
Yeah. And they said, oh, you're gonna do something with the Black Racer, kind of like a revamped version of Black Racer. She's kind of like a racer of some sort. I'm like, okay. And then I still think that Cotton, I actually ended up putting pencil to paper, or fingers to keyboard for the Black Adam stuff first, and then the Black Racer stuff. The minute I started doing that, suddenly that showed up, and it was like, oh, okay, now you can get started on that. And it was like, okay, I'm going to name her Tonda, and it's going to be kind of like mech racing, and then it's a different tonally thing, because you're talking about what happened to her, and she sees death, and then she kind of becomes the avatar of death. And it's one of the things I've asked recently about her and what the state of that fourth world stuff is, and could I play with her a little bit more in a way, which would be really fun. I haven't really gotten any answers to that, by the way. But it was it was cool. I think it's a cool little story. And to me, her power was like, we kind of, she's not on skis racing after you. It's like, she has this power, but she's able to kind of like pull metal and kind of make her own mech. Like, you see her increase in size. It's like she's suddenly doing this and this because she does become the avatar of death. But I also wanted to give her a flair, so she did something a little different. But it's something I would love to explore. I love the fourth world stuff a lot. I love Mr. Miracle a lot. One of the first things I pitched out here as a TV show was a Hunger Dogs, TV show that I wanted to do. Scott Free and kind of like Battlestar Galactica, because it's very epic. But I wasn't intimidated. I was more excited, and I was also scared to death that when I turned in pages that, I'm like so full of the imposter syndrome. I'm like, oh, please just tell me it's okay. Just please tell me it's okay. And they were like, yeah, it's great. It was just so laggy. I was like, okay, it's just great. Okay, great. Okay. And it was even like the Black Adam stuff when I was getting those pages back, like, this is bananas. And you can tell when you read the Black Adam stuff, I'm just getting my sea legs because I am figuring out page turns, and I'm figuring out, oh my gosh, maybe I shouldn't have so much dialogue here. Like there's so much I'm learning in that moment. But boy, that was fun too. I mean, it was fun to be able to have Black Adam utter Shazam in the vacuum of space, and then to get, hit by it from the remnants of Earth, stuff like that. I was like, oh, I love this. That's the stuff that I can't believe they let me do this.
Yeah, it's so fantastic, and probably my favorite visuals of the entire Future State, that Black Adam story, what Fernando did. Is it easier to, now that you guys have been working together for so long? Is it easier to write your scripts now? You get to go shorthand because you guys are on the same page.
Yeah, he's so exacting. I mean, thank goodness, because I'm not as detail oriented of a person that I should be, and so I'll write things down. He'll do them, but he'll ask me before. It's like, hey, I have these questions, and he'll ask some questions. And then what I really love is he owns his art in a way that when inks and colors come back, he is so on top of it and saying like, hey, the contrast needs to be here, and this needs to be doing here. Because if you ask me, it all just looks really good. You know what I mean? I'm just like, oh, this just looks good. And if they said, oh, but what do you think about the red? I'm like, huh? It just looks good. Like I'm such a Luddite when it comes to it. But I mean, so much of comics, it's like 80% of it is just their magnificent genius. And Jeremy Cox has been doing a lot of the colors, and he's been fantastic. And the lettering, it is a super collaborative exercise. And I mean, I benefited from animation because animation is extremely collaborative too. So I think that coming from that, this is,
yeah, you already had to learn that lesson of get out of the way and let the visual guys do the visuals, because they'll make you look good.
Oh my gosh. I would much, I mean, growing up, it was always about like, oh, I wonder how cool this looks, Like I said, when I was reading the Jim Lee run on X-Men, it was like, oh my gosh, or Liefeld stuff. It was like, oh wow, I've never seen this, I mean, at the time it was like, and then McFarlane, like all that kind of era of stuff. But then even before, you just knew when you picked up something that was really awesome, and it just told the story for you, and you didn't have to. There was a moment, I remember there was a moment where it just like comics got too wordy for me. I'm like, oh gosh, man, like listen, all right, I gotta drag myself through this like full page of word bubbles. And it's like, even in the X-Men run now, it's like, oh, you're giving me a sheet of instructions. I can't do it. Let's just get it.
Yeah, those Claremont X-Men comics can be really, really wordy.
Yeah, but the Dark Phoenix saga was like,
oh yeah,
that was everything. When Wolverine gets like his weight increased and he gets smashed down into the sewers, and that last victory was like, now it's my turn. I was like, oh, Wolverine, and like you're so pumped. But that and for DC, for me, it was like the Justice League International, JM and Keith Giffen and get to be able to, oh my gosh, like the fact that I got to work in the Legion of Doom issue.
Kevin McGuire.
Oh my gosh! Like it was like they were telling me like, yeah, you can do Kevin. I'm like, what did you say? And then to be able to do it, and it just was so funny to me. It was so, there's that panel, and I wrote it, and I just couldn't believe how funny it was, where he super slaps Lex Luthor, and Luthor's just like, I can't believe you super slapped me, and I just keep thinking, how did we get Kevin McGuire to do this? This is so great. Like, it makes me so happy.
Yeah, there's still nobody who does facial expressions better than Kevin. He's amazing.
Yes, he did this one. I'm so tangenting, but he did this Batgirl. I don't know if it was like an annual or whatever, and it was Babs was like chasing after Catwoman.
That was the dirty issue.
Was it him or was it Amanda Connor? I can't remember, because she does really good too. But
no, it was Kevin McGuire.
It was.
It was.
I was howling because it was like a nudist club or something.
I know, they go through like they went through like they were nude at one point.
Yeah, and so Batgirl's like, I'm not gonna let her get away. She's like, this is so funny. It was such a funny issue. He makes everything 1,000 times funnier.
I got a question because
Yeah.
you mentioned you've been here, like it's basically just been over a year for you writing all
Yeah.
these comics, and I'm trying to think of another writer who has in a single year had the opportunity you have had to play in the sandbox the extent that you have with the number of characters that you've been able to write and done a very good job doing it. And with like you said, with by your own admission, with a high degree of praise. And I mean, we could rattle them off, everything: JSA, Doctor Fate, Justice League Dark, Eclipso, Superman, Animal Man, Legion of Doom, Black Adam, Future State. My God, my question is there one comic book other than the one you did with your daughter, which I'm sure at your heart is probably your favorite one, but other than that, is there one that stands out that you've enjoyed the most, that sort of is a highlight, other than, of course, the one you with your daughter?
The one with my daughter, yeah. That's tough because I really like the annual. I really do.
The Flash annual.
Yeah, and it means a lot to me because I like the Roy. I like the emotion of it. But the book before that, it might be that one. It's the one with Kevin McGuire, but it also has the conversation with Ira as she's grown up, and that meant a lot to me too because as a parent, that's all I want, is to know that my daughter's okay, and she not only says she's okay, but she says, I'm a hero, and I've learned this from you, and we see that Flash planet, and there's all this stuff that by the way, I'm like, I know where that planet is. It's not Mercury, but I know exactly where it is, and I want to introduce it. So that meant a lot because, again, like, to me, the idea of being able to sit down with your daughter, and in the book, it kind of sends Wally in a different direction because not only at the beginning of his arc in 768, he doesn't want to do this anymore, and he doesn't want to put his family through it. But that was a huge turning point of him realizing, like, it's also a responsibility of his to train up the next group of heroes, the next generation of heroes. And it was also me kind of like taking a shot at Geoff a little bit too. Like, Jay's not becoming a turtle, not under my watch. He's not. I'm not letting him become a bad guy. Forget it. I was like, yeah, that's me telling everybody, like, oh, nope.
Not on my watch. Well, that's fantastic, and to me, it shows that DC's got the right writer on the Flash because, you're again, not to repeat myself, but the issue that means the most to you is, again, it's an issue of looking toward the positivity of the future. Wally is hope. He really is the hope. And Geoff himself, in that rebirth issue, that, like, honestly, he made grown men cry with that rebirth issue when Barry and Wally touched. Fantastic that you're.
In Flashpoint, it's all emotion. That last scene where it's like Bruce gets the letter, it's just like, oh, it's gut wrenching. It's he's very much, yeah. I hope I can lead with that. I mean, I have big ideas, but it's always, I do it. I found that writers, there's like two types of writers generally. This is a mass generalization, but there are people that start with the premise of, like, I want this to be about tragedy. And then there are people that start with the premise of, wouldn't it be cool if a robot came back in time, And I'm definitely that one. And then they both end up in the same place. It's just learning who you are as a writer. Like, I'll come up with a big idea, but also through exploring that idea, try to discover what it actually is about emotionally. And it's been interesting because I definitely, I mean, you've read it. Like, there are books that are just like, you can pick this book up, you can read it, and you can put it down. And it's not, the obligation isn't like, oh gosh, I gotta pick up the next book, because that can be tiring too. So I just want to be able to give enough variation. I want people also to be able to go to this book and be like, this book is bananas. Like, 1 week he's with Gem World, the next week, somebody's putting a weird device on people's heads, and it's like, that sort of thing. It's like, I don't want it to be, I do want it to be unexpected in terms of, it's not your normal Flash fare as we've seen it recently. It's a little different, a little more globetrotting. And that's been fun. But like you said, it is about hope with Wally. And because, he's gone through so much. So So the idea that he, above all, has been through so much, and he's come out the other side, and he's seen how, and that's why I think the Flash Annual is so important. It's like you have to stay until the miracle happens. You can't leave, and the meta of it too is, in the world of superheroes, we know that death doesn't necessarily mean death.
Mm-hmm.
We know, and I think Wally, above all, probably understands that better than anybody. And so he's always holding out hope. And that's why he's holding out hope for villains to be heroes, and holding out hope for all sorts of stuff like that. And I like that empathy that he has for people.
Yeah, and again,
Well said.
you write Wally's voice so fantastically well, but like if somebody asked me to sum up the Flash book in one word, I would use the word you use. It's fun. It's just, that's the thing, and comics should be fun. So we really appreciate you taking the time, Jeremy,
thank you.
to talk to us
Absolutely,
today.
man.
Sorry I rambled so much.
No, not at all. We'll definitely be bugging you to come back when you can say more about Flashpoint Beyond, maybe after a few issues have dropped. It'd be great to pick your brain. But if people want to follow along, pick your brain about issues of Flash, or let them give you their thoughts on the latest issue, where's the best place to follow your work online?
Just Twitter, Space Kicker. That's the name on Twitter, and that's the easiest way to follow me. And that's where I am.
Great, fantastic. We'll put that Twitter link in the show notes, everybody, so you can go click there if you're having a hard time finding them. So again, best of luck with the future projects.
Thank you.
I'll be more than happy to hear that you're writing more than one book. A Mr. Terrific book from you, I think, would be in order. An Animal Man
so
book.
Come on, Mr. Terrific is Buckaroo Banzai is the greatest thing ever. I'm just saying.
Yes, 100%. Well, here's the other thing. Rocky and I were talking about this earlier today. I wasn't the biggest fan, like talking about really heavy, dense, almost depressing books. The latest Animal Man book was a little that for me. So I'd love to have your more fun take on Animal Man, going back to his roots of when it was a little more not that what Grant did, which I feel informed the New 52 book a lot. That's its own thing, but let's get him back. I mean, the fact that his powers are he can, imitate animals. I mean, there's an absurdity there. Let's get back to some of that. So that would
absurdity.
So that would be another one.
I think that now that Maxine's, in the Flash world, which, by the way, they're like, he lives in San Diego. I'm like, not anymore. And then they're like, and then it was just kind of like, okay,
whatever. Nobody's using them anyway.
They can come over for dinner now. I don't know. like we'll see what I can get away with. But that I agree. I think Animal Man. I don't know if you ever read the Terrifics, but that was really fun too.
Yeah, it was. Jeff Lemire.
Oh, it was good.
I thought that was really fun. And like I said, I have an affinity for that. I'm desperate to get my hands on Ted Kord at some point, because that was a huge. That was one of the first. The Charlton book with Ted Kord was one of the first ones I ever picked up, and
give Dan Jurgens a call. I'm sure he won't mind.
Oh no, he's doing fine, but that Ditko, when I told Jeff this, actually. It was one of the first things I said to him, was like, I go, you wrote one of the best Ted Kord stories, and then immediately made me hate you at the end of the story because you had Max Lord shoot him in the head. And I was like, I was so angry as a fan. I was so angry. And then they brought Jaime Reyes, and I was like, I don't care about Jaime Reyes. And I was all snotty about it, like, how stupid, another Blue Beetle. There's only one Blue Beetle, And then I read it, and then I was like, oh, I get it. He's pretty cool.
He's pretty cool. All right. Well, from our lips to DC's ears, we would be very, very happy to see you on some other books. But anyway, like I said before, Jeremy, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a blast. Make sure, all you listeners, make sure you're picking up The Flash. We give it our highest possible recommendation. We cover it every week it comes out on DC Spotlight. So go back and listen to this last week's DC Spotlight for our thoughts on 778. And make sure you're following Jeremy on Twitter. So thanks for joining us as always, and we will talk to you next time.
See you later.
Thanks.